Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the asteroid Pallas in astrology, aka Pallas Athena. Now, as far as the basic meaning goes, well, Pallas in astrology, it could be about how solving dilemmas, issues, how we may do that. It could also be a rapport or connection, or what would be the perceived connection we had with our dad or our father. It can be connected with the legalities, legal matters, um, dealings with men. It could also be associated with disputes, and also attention on concepts as well. Now, and also too, Pallas in astrology can also be about debilitations that could be attributed to an immune system that may be diminished. Now, it could also be associated with art. Now, let's say if somebody has a Pallas and Pisces like I have, there could be an interest in abstract art. And even, when I was little, I used to draw like superhero characters. So it's interesting. Superhero characters, of course, fantastical. They're fantasy and fiction. And it could also be about how we use our intellect as well. And given that, this is like, this could also be, when you're talking about Pallas and astrology, it could be about how tough choices are made in conjunction with one's it could be the relationships of men or men that are simply prominent in one's life scheme. Now, it could also be about the strategy that one may use to traverse uncharted territory. It could be the manner in which you make things transpire. It could also be, how certain strategies may be formulated. Now, the thing about this is when you're talking about Pallas, first off, like Pallas and a sign, I could explain through an example. Now, Pallas in the sign, let's say somebody has Pallas and Pisces like I do. Well, that could be somebody that may solve dilemmas through the metaphysical, through photography, filmography, pictures. It could be the mind maybe dealing with the abstract to some degree, or and it may be certain intuitive intellect. Given that, you're talking about, Pallas in astrology could be about how one may use their intellect, and when it's and you're talking about Pisces energy. Being a water sign, Pisces can be mediumistic, so it could be about just being intuitively like forecasting like that future. And I would say is how Pisces, somebody with Pallas and Pisces, is if somebody has Pallas in the zodiac sign Virgo, of course, it could be about more analytical. It could be where people are using their mind, or they're using it as far as extrapolating data, being very punctilious with details, really seeing all the minor things in issues. Now, where Pallas and Pisces is about more, would be like seeing more of the whole picture, using the intellect to see that, as opposed to being discerning over details like Virgo. Now, the thing about this too, and interestingly enough, I do, having Pallas and Pisces, I do use, a lot of what I do as far as solving issues and dilemmas, I do so using the metaphysical, which includes astrology for others, in many cases. Now, to give people insight into their charts. Now, and the thing about it is, and of course, when you give insight into someone's chart, they have an understanding of themselves, the good and the bad. And if there's something negative that may be going on with them, they could look at their chart to look for answers to that. And I can help people as far as that goes. Now, the thing about it is, another example with like my case, we're talking about elaborating a little more Pallas and Pisces. That could be the use of forgiveness, and while using perhaps using the use of forgiveness, really in terms of, is really, that could be very important. And even It could be even the use of just being forgiving in terms of making tough choices in conjunctions with men that could be prominent in one's life scheme. It could be really just showing the forgiveness, showing compassion, self-sacrificing energy in doing so, since we're talking about Pisces. Now it could also be in some cases too, you looking at this as well, and again going back to having Pallas and Pisces on it could be where one could show, like in my case, an interest in the abstract art perhaps, but also in fantastical fantasy, as far as characters may go, drawing those kind of drawing those things. And it could also be in time you're talking about looking at this as well, going back to the fact that Pallas and astrology can be connected as far as the strategy may one use to traverse uncharted territory. It could be through, again, going through going online, as far as watching as far as filmography, seeing videos, maybe even I might even be looking at astrology charts of the location to see, as far as the place may go, or understanding maybe the crime in the particular area. And the thing about this too is, with me, given that the Pallas and astrology can be connected with debilitations, one may have that could be attributed to a depleted or diminished immune system. My susceptible areas might be tingling, numbness in the feet or toes, perhaps due to a depleted or diminished immune system, because my Pallas is in Pisces, and Pisces, of course, it does correspond anatomically with the feet and the toes. Now, it's also important to look at Pallas by house position, as of course this could impact the delineation and interpretation. Now, mine being in the 11th house, this could be perhaps an ability or propensity to solve cryptic messages and even ambiguous messages with the help and assistance of friends and or acquaintances. Cryptograms, it could even be just doing something for fun like cryptograms, or anything that might be a little just generally nebulous or unclear. And also perhaps even using video filmography from the internet. Video, of course, could be associated with the zodiac sign Pisces. The internet could be connected with the 11th house, because the 11th house is associated with social networking and social media, and being doing so to strategize uncharted territory. Now, let's say, for example, let's take another example. Let's say that somebody has Pallas and Capricorn in their 3rd house in their natal chart. This could be, in some cases, perhaps joint issues that may be due to a depleted immune system, which could impact them. And of course, joint issues can be associated with Capricorn. And given that if it's in the 3rd house, that could strongly impact matters pertaining to short journeys like driving. So, because the 3rd house is associated with that. Now, it's also important to look at aspects that Pallas makes to points in your chart. Of course, that could impact the delineation and interpretation. Now, mine makes, some may say, a long square to my natal moon in Gemini. Now, looking at, of course, that could be in conflict, but Pallas and Pisces, of course, can be about making tough choices in matters and connections with males that could be dominant in one's life scheme. And the thing about it is, and even friend, or in this case, in my case, platonic friendships. Now, of course, you being Pisces, using compassion and sensitivity. Now, the moon, however, being in insensitive Gemini, there could be a little conflict and contradiction. Moon in Gemini may have superficial emotions and keep others that are even close to home, so to speak, at arm's length. So that could be a little bit of a conflict, given that Pallas and Pisces may like to make those decisions considering males that are prominent in one's life scheme, using a lot of compassion and sensitivity and self-sacrificing energy. Now, Moon in Gemini also can be more concerned with their variety and activity as opposed to others' feelings. Now, Pallas and Pisces at the same time may be a placement where one may fantasize in terms of taking a plan of action into uncharted territory as opposed to actually doing it. Moon in Gemini, of course, can give very restless energy, very peripatetic energy in terms of traversing from one home to the next. So that would create perhaps a conflict and a little bit of tension and exasperation, because Moon in Gemini may not be able to sit still as far as their actual home situation goes, and being very mobile, but because the moon can be connected with the home. But Pallas and Pisces may not, could be about, Pallas could be about our plans to traverse uncharted territory, but being in Pisces can be one where one may more fantasize and daydream about that as opposed to actually taking action on. Now, some other things I want to talk about. Another example of an aspect involving Pallas. Let's say that somebody has Pallas in their natal chart making an adverse aspect to their natal Jupiter. This could be that person that can quote unquote solve problems through perhaps breaking the law. Now, because Jupiter can be connected with the law, and when you have those energies adversarial, of course, that is one way it could manifest in a very negative manifestation, of course. Now, let's say if it was in Aquarius, one may want to solve their problem, so to speak, through the use of cybercrime and through maybe doing something in connection with the internet crime, or maybe even jamming police signals, because that could be connected with something electronic. And Aquarius, of course, can be associated with anything with computers or electronics. Now, another thing I want to talk about, let's say that somebody has Pallas that's retrograde in their natal chart. That could indicate more review over something associated with Pallas. Now, I have Pallas retrograde in my chart in Pisces. Now, this could be a little bit more review over perhaps helping others solve issues through the metaphysical, which includes astrology, through as far as friends may go, being it's in the 11th house, or even cryptic messages that might be solved with the help of friends. This might be a little bit some delays in that, or might even be a little bit more review in those matters since it's retrograde. Also, I have it's intercepted as well, and if somebody has Pallas intercepted, well, that can give some vacillation and distortion of energy. Sometimes it could be very suppressed or held back, but other times it can really, the Pallas energy can come out very strongly. So, anyway, people. Well, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for my take on Pallas and astrology. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be talking about Pallas in Aries. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.